the lenses of archival documents, culture, history, and literature. And we will start our event with a round of words of greetings, welcoming words. And I'm extremely pleased to pass a word to the president of Kиєво-Могилянська Academy, Сергій Квіт. Сергій Квіт is now abroad, but in the era of technology, it's not a problem at all, because we have a small video address from President Kвіт. And please have a look. We will see now.
Шановне товариство, вітаю вас. Сьогодні дуже важливий день. Ми розпочинаємо надзвичайно важливий проєкт «Єврейська спадщина в Україні», який ми будемо реалізовувати на базі Києво-Могилянської академії у співпраці з ЮНЕСКО за підтримки Європейського Союзу. Ми розуміємо, що ця тема дуже тривалий час була заборонена. На неї не звертали увагу, але ми завжди намагалися приділяти вивченню юдаїки як міждисциплінарній сфері належну увагу. У нас колись працювала перша в Україні сертифікатна програма з юдаїки, яка переросла в магістерську, тобто освітню наукову програму з юдаїки. У нас працює Центр досліджень історії і культури східноєвропейського єврейства. Ми маємо науковий центр орієнталістики імені Омеляна Присака. Ми маємо академічні сили в нашій кафедрі історії. Тобто я вірю і хочу привітати вас. Я вірю, що цей проєкт буде реалізований успішно. І бажаю вам успіху і всього самого хорошого. Переможемо, товариство.
Thank you. So I will translate briefly. President Kviet greets all of us and congratulates us on the launch of this very important project, stating that this topic was prohibited for some time and was not enough researched and studied. And also President Kviet is paying attention to the research capacities that we have at Kиєво-Могилянська Academy, stating about the certificate program as well as MA program in Jewish studies at Kиєво-Могилянська Academy, and also paying attention to research centers such as the Center for the Study of East European Jewry, the Омелян Присак Center of Oriental Studies, Department of History, and Department of Literature. It was not mentioned, but the evidence that we are here, and hopefully we will have our roundtable today. And now I'm passing the word to Albertina Peterbark, who is Program Coordinator, CI Sector, UNESCO Athena in Ukraine.
Hello, and thank you very much for being here today. I'm very honored and very moved too for presenting and welcoming you and presenting this project that we're launching today that is called Jewish Heritage in Ukraine, Interdisciplinary Reflection through the lenses of archival documents, culture, history, and literature. That is implemented by the Kиєво-Могилянська Academy, congratulations, and with the support of the European Union. And this project is, in fact, part of a broader project that is also funded by the European Union, and is called Preserving Ukraine's Jewish Documentary Heritage, Honoring Collective Memory, Enhancing Knowledge and Access to Archives while Promoting Intercultural Dialogue. And I will explain a little bit the origin of this long and very pompous title, so it's going to be clear for everyone. But the important thing is to say that these initiatives aim to preserve and give new life to the vast Jewish documentary and cultural heritage of Ukraine, ensuring that as part of the collective memory, it will keep a source of knowledge and culture and inspiration for future generations. And why UNESCO? Why I'm here today, why UNESCO is supporting this project. Well, UNESCO is a UN agency that has the mandate of build peace through culture, science, education, and communication, but also as well as to promote the free flow of ideas through the word and image. And this is totally connected to the Article 19 of the Declaration, International Declaration of Human Rights that promotes freedom of expression. Because freedom of expression is not only the freedom to say something, it's also the freedom to access to information, access to reliable information, have access to the memory of our culture, our heritage. So that's why I'm here today. That's why UNESCO is supporting this as part of preservation, but also promoting access and awareness to this information. And we believe in UNESCO that sustainable peace is not achieved only by ending conflict, but also by promoting understanding, trust, capacity of societies to remember, and to also be open for exchange, open of mind, and also for communities to gain strength in this openness. So, you know, for decades, the study of Jewish history and culture in Ukraine was silenced and restricted. And today we have an opportunity and the responsibility to rediscover and reinterpret this heritage with openness, honesty, and respect. And I told you at the beginning that this is moving for me for many reasons, and this is related also to memory. Because I'm the granddaughter of an Ukrainian Jewish man, his name was Isaac Peterberg, who lived in Vinnytsia region in Sharhorod, and who left at the beginning of the 19th century with thousands of Jews. Not only him, his family, my aunts, my uncles, everyone left. Everyone left Ukraine. Many went to United States, many went to Argentina, and that's how I got to Argentina. But to me, it was kind of really puzzling, is that the memory of these people living in Ukraine was almost erased. Yes, people remember Jews being persecuted during the pre-Second World War, maybe the Cossacks' time, but all the Jews that left at the beginning of the 20th century are a little bit erased from memory. And I don't think that is a coincidence or it's just a small detail. I think it's part of a will to erase the memory of the Jews that were living in Ukraine. And I think that's why, to me, this is very personal too, because to me it's also meeting with my own heritage. So there is this part. And the interesting thing of this project that is super exciting to me is that it's not only to preserve archives, it's not something that is only about preservation, but it's also about restoring the voices and stories like mine or like one of my grandfather. Stories of people who lived in Ukraine, who raised their children here, who were absolutely integrated to the culture. And I think that's something that is really important, and it's a narrative that we share, that is shared not only in Ukraine, but it also in whole Europe. And also that reminds us of the diversity and the importance of the challenge to embrace this diversity and the strength we need to celebrate it and to engage with it. So we are very proud to be supporting this project with Mohila Academy, and we are really admire the approach that is an interdisciplinary one that connects literature, history, archives, cultural memory, and reflects the best of what UNESCO wants to stand for and we stand for. The belief that knowledge is a bridge between people and culture and a foundation for peace. So, thank you very much. Congratulations, and Slava Ukraini.
Thank you so much, dear Albertina. And now my pleasure and honor to introduce to you Олеся Островська-Люта, the General Director of Мистецький Арсенал, also Kyiv-Mogila Academy alumna and a member of Supervisory Board of Kyiv-Mogila Academy.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you for having me tonight here. I'm very proud to be here as an alumni of Kyiv-Mogila Academy, and I truly believe that this is one of the most honest, the most daring thinking communities in Ukraine. So I'm very happy to hear about this project in Kyiv-Mogila Academy. I believe it's going to be very interesting. And let me share with you one very, very small story and one highlight from the book arsenal, which is the one of the major annual projects of the institution that I lead, of Мистецький арсенал. So the very small story. In 2024, I think, in New York, there was an event speaking about Ukrainian culture, describing the situation of Ukrainian culture. It was organized by the State Department of the US, and there was a woman who was taking me and Volodymyr Yermolenko, also a professor of Kyiv-Mogila Academy, and Volodymyr Sheiko, the director of Ukrainian Institute, around, meeting us with people and helping us to make connections. Her name is Jessica Lustig, and she is of Jewish origin, and her ancestors, just like Albertina's, come from Ukraine. So we were talking about that a lot. Her family fled pogroms in Ukraine and took refuge in the US. And we were discussing it like over and over again. And when we were saying goodbye, I said something which I really and truly felt at that moment. I said, I hope you will be able to come to Ukraine to see the land of your ancestors. And I hope this is how she understands Ukraine now. And then later this year at the Book Arsenal, one of the curators of our focus team, Marcy Shore, who proposed the main topic to discuss, the main topic sounded like this: everything is translation. So it was all around languages and translation. And there was one panel which I personally appreciated probably most. Don't tell anyone about the rest of the program. And the title was Yiddish as a Ukrainian language. And I thought it was brilliant, because this is how you try to speak about the complexity of this shared past and this shared culture, and how you try to place what you do not know into a larger context, and also how we can discuss difficult topics, which I hope this project will do. So I wish all the success to this project, and I hope to hear about its outcomes.
Thank you so much, Olesiu. And now we are having a small presentation. If I may ask Alexander to launch the presentation. And I'm going briefly to tell you what we are going to do. This is the project title, Jewish Heritage in Ukraine, Interdisciplinary Reflections Through the Lenses of Archival Documents, Culture, Literature and History. It is facilitated and supported by UNESCO with the financial support of European Union. It's a one-year project which emerged in a tight dialogue with our partners from UNESCO that was carefully discussed to present you now the planned activities. Just a moment. The next one. Yeah. The key components, the objectives of this project is to strengthen Jewish documentary heritage in Ukraine, promote intellectual dialogue, and enhance access to archival collections. And the key components is to strengthen research capacities, to present the results to the wider, broader audience, and to search for ways how to represent this topic to a broad, wider audience, both in Ukraine and abroad, to increase academic knowledge production and interdisciplinary cooperation in Jewish studies, expand public discourse and awareness about Jewish culture, literary and historical heritage in Ukraine. Now, these are the key project strengths. So we are very proud to stress that our project is interdisciplinary, and that is how the research works practically everywhere, because we cannot find a solution to a question using only the perspective of one discipline if we want to have this result consistent and relevant to many disciplines. And also its significant scholarly resources, availability, previous project experience, and qualified team of the researchers who are going to conduct the research, engagement of expert community and wider public, and it's also the accent of our project that it is aimed to a wider audience to present the result of our research. And now about the project, main implementers on NAUCMA side, that this project consists of the work of 2 our research centers. Center for Studies of History and Culture of Eastern European Jewry, Омелян Прицак Research Center for Oriental Studies, Володимир Моренця Department of Literature, and his Department of History. So 2 research centers and 2 departments within the Faculty of Humanities, and we are also happy to see the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, Dmitro Mazin. So yeah. Next one. Oh, yeah. It's the next one. So we have 3 groups. This is how our project is structured. Cultural heritage group, historical heritage group, and literary heritage group. So literary heritage group is having a round table discussion today, so everyone is welcome to join. It will be today at 6 p.m. right after coffee break that we are going to have in a while. So these are the lead of the groups. Irina Borysyuk, who is the lead of the literary section. Irina, you are here. Yeah, so Irina. We have also Taisia Sidorchuk, historical group. Taisia Sidorchuk, and Leonid Finberg, who is not with us today, but we have other representatives of this group and the center, Yulia Kravchenko, and yeah. Mm-hmm. And Konstantin Siho as well.
We are very honored to represent here.
Yeah, great. So these are our key project activities. What we are planning to do, we are planning to research archives, to describe what is there, to transform their findings into research articles, into research presentations. Geographic area consists of Kyiv, Odessa, Dnipro, and Lviv, as well as cities in Khmelnytsky and Poltava regions. Academic research publications, that's what we promised already. 15 academic research papers, interdisciplinary collective monograph, The Jewish Heritage in Ukraine, Culture, History, Literature, and Beyond. Also anthology, Ukrainian Jewish Relation in the Dissident Movement, and textbook, Chrestomathy of Jewish Literature in Ukraine. Also, one of the part of this project is Jewish Heritage Virtual Museum and its development, its fulfillment and presentation of archival issues and as well as other ones. Also, as I said, we are aimed at popularization of the findings of research, which is why we plan to have video blogs, video essays, as well as online discussions. And public debate facilitation as well, so it's also about popularization of the Jewish heritage, conference, round tables, and we also plan a final big interdisciplinary conference by the end of this project. And please follow us. We have many more things to tell, and you see our plans are ambitious. Thank you so much for coming. If you have any questions, please you can address them now. If not, we are inviting you to have some sweets and coffee just in the room which is opposite this room, and we invite you all to join our round table at 6 p.m. Okay? Okay, thank you.
Раз, два, три. Почнемо? Добре. Дороге товариство, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be beginning our evening today, and again, many apologies on my part for being somewhat late. There was an unforeseen circumstance today that concerns our keynote speaker, Mr. David Reef. This concerns his health, and everything's going well, but there were things that had to be done. And instead of Mr. Reef, I'll be letting you know some of the things that he would have talked about today, because we did have a good number of discussions about his topic, and at a future date we'll definitely get together with David so that he can then in person, of course, talk about what he wanted to talk about. So I think I'll jump right into into relating perhaps what David would have talked about if he were here. And his topic was post-war American and Canadian Jewish writers. And what was occurring both in the United States and in Canada at the time. And I think it's, in discussing his topic with David, we sort of came to a conclusion that it would be a good comparison to make because of the almost, I don't want to say that a similar situation would have existed with, for instance, the smaller Ukraine beside a larger Russia, even within the Soviet Union, and the smaller Canada beside a larger United States. And what that meant for writing, for culture, for the writers that we would have talked about. And he would have begun, David, speaking about the post-war generation of young writers of Jewish ethnicity. These would have been writers like Philip Roth, like Bernard Malamud, indeed his mother, Susan Sontag, and a good number of others. And this would have been the first time after the World War II experience, if I can put it that way, that non-Anglo-Saxon writers would have been coming into American literature in a major way. Hence the Jewish American writers that I just mentioned, and them becoming a factor in American literature. Having said that, David would have made, and he would have made this point very well with examples, that these writers that were mentioned a second ago, their Jewishness was not readily evident in their books. So someone like Bernard Malamud, when he writes the novel The Natural about baseball, There's really, if you didn't know that he was of Jewish ethnicity, you would never tell that this is a writer in any way wanting to be in touch with his identity. And that could be said for a good many of the writers of that generation. In other words, there was no attempt to accentuate their Jewishness. To the contrary, there was an attempt to, I don't know if you could use this term, but to blend in as much as possible to the new post-war mainstream American reality. And most of these writers, all of them in fact, of Jewish ethnicity at that time, who became major writers, like the ones who are mentioned and others, didn't accentuate discussions about Jewish identity. That would come later. And if we really fast forward in the American situation to the I guess 2000s approximately, and someone like Jonathan Safran Foer, the American writer, and he was translated, by the way, by our faculty member Rostislav Samkiv into Ukrainian. By that time, Jewishness as a factor in the novel Everything is Illuminated is a very strong concern, obviously. And the reason for that would have been all the developments that came after this first wave of post-war writers. Because we get the 1950s, we get the 1960s with searches for identity, especially the Afro-American search for identity. We get figures like Malcolm X, who changes his the surname that he was given by the slave-owning masters of his ancestors, and he changes his surname to X to indicate that my identity is totally different from the one that is carried by my surname. So the Afro-American movement, other movements of the 1960s certainly contributed to new searches for roots. And if we go back, I think it's the 1970s, the television program Roots, based on Arthur Haley's book, Roots. And it was probably the very first time in popular culture that an author in a popular book, wanted to, in a very major way, get involved with memory, to try to write about what happened in my family's past. Hence the name of the book, Roots. Where did I come from? Who are we? And so forth. And that book, Arthur Haley, and that television series, because it was extremely popular, had a huge influence on the American reality through television, through other media, and that caused other writers to start then exploring their roots. If we think of Afro-American writers, sometimes my memory goes bad on me, but the very, very fine, good writer of the 1990s who, someone can help me out, Жінка, авторка. Morrison, Toni Morrison, thank you so much, who then also gets into a history of the past, what happened in that awful, terrible, traumatic past, and other authors who will contribute to that. And at that point, Afro-American writing, which was always present in the United States, even in the 19th century, it becomes part of a mainstream. Probably for the first time in American history. And if we think of cinema, for instance, a director like Spike Lee, who makes the crossover in his movies, one of his first movies to really sort of make that crossover into mainstream American cinema is called She's Gotta Have It. I mean, you can sort of think what that movie would have been about, but it marked a moment when white audiences wanted to see a black director's film that was populated by black actors. And black actors in American cinema were never given lead roles in the past. The first time that happened was sometime in the 1960s in a film called, it was Sidney Poitier. Again, my memory is, we're talking about memory today, and I'm having my own memory issues. It was the first time that the lead role was given to an Afro-American actor in a major, In the Heat of the Night was the name of the movie. And it was about racism in the Deep South and a Philadelphia detective who was sent to the Deep South to investigate a murder. And then other movies came along, for instance, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? And of course, in this instance, a white young woman brings back a young black man to her family. So it was the first time that racial questions were being openly discussed in American mainstream movies and in other forms of culture. But that wouldn't have been the case with the writers of the generation prior to them. Now, David would have switched into a discussion about Canadian writing, and that's a different story, because he would have concentrated on two writers today, and I hope that something very nice will come out of this. And the two authors are the very great poet Leonard Cohen, the poet, singer, bard. Leonard Cohen today can be much heard in Ukraine on the airwaves, and he's becoming more and more popular. Some of his songs have been covered very many times. A song like Alleluia, which is evident to all over the world. Many audiences know this song. And David would have made the point that unlike Leonard Cohen's, that is, American neighbors, his Jewishness was always important to him, and he was part of that older generation. And for instance, a song like Alleluia is full of biblical imagery, just as are his other poems and songs. This is a writer, poet, and a singer who was very in touch with his identity. Now, partly that could have been because, it's a minority within a minority. A Jewish writer living in French Quebec, living in Canada, which is also a minority situation. So you have these triple minorities. So probably Leonard Cohen would have been in a different sort of surrounding culturally when thinking about his past, his family's past, and so forth. And that would be why his poetry is again replete with mentions of his religion and ethnicity. And here I'd just like to mention that if we fast forward again a bit to Ukrainian poetry and to the wonderful poet Moisei Fishbane, and Moisei Fishbane became a translator of Leonard Cohen. And his translation of the poem by Leonard Cohen that became an international hit, the Spanish material. Again, I forget the name of the poem. Maybe someone can help me out. It's a beautiful, beautiful song that Leonard Cohen then did at every concert that he was at. And Moisei Fishbane's translation is stunning. When you read the Ukraine, and this is a very strange situation because Leonard Cohen took Federico Garcia Lorca's poem, written in Spanish in the 1930s. The Little Waltz, I think. Little Viennese Waltz is the name of the poem and song. Pequeño Vals, I forget, in Spanish, Viennese, yeah. Exactly, thank you so much, yeah. So Leonard Cohen takes this Spanish, and he was absolutely enthused about Lorca's poetry. Leonard Cohen, he named his daughter Lorca. So I guess that tells us something. And he has this incredible rendition into English of Lorca. And then Moisei Fishbane takes that wandering text by Lorca and transmits it into Ukrainian in just a heavenly way, if I can put it that way. So, and we won't be probably talking about Moisés Fishbane tonight, but obviously his Jewish identity, his Ukrainian identity, they were both very important to him. And for instance, I guess we'll be talking about many controversial things in our project. And one of the things that once Moisés Fishbane said publicly, and there is much talk about the Ukrainian insurgent army, the UPA, and he is on record as saying, if I were a young man at that time, I would have been in the UPA, which is probably surprising to some people who may not have thought of something like that being possible. So the other person was Mordecai Richler that David would have spoken about. And Mordecai Richler was one of the great Montreal writers of Jewish ethnicity. Novels of his like Portnoy's Complaint, St. Urban's Horseman, they're very much, first of all, Montreal novels. And they're very much Jewish Montreal novels. So if, for instance, Bernard Malamud doesn't talk about a Jewish New York, for instance, Richler very much definitely talks about a Jewish Montreal. And to him that was important. It was a very strong, very vibrant community in Montreal, the Jewish community, that is. He was not the only writer to have come out of it, but he was a very a talented writer, that his books were very well received, and not only in Canada, but in the United States. And here we have that colonial situation again, because the way things were structured in Canada at the time, to make it sort of as an international artist, if you were a Canadian, you had to make it in New York or in Los Angeles. You had to have the Americans notice you. If they noticed you, that was the sign of approval. And we can see the parallels here, right? We can see, we can think about this in very many ways, but Ukrainian artists going to Moscow to give concerts in the 2000s and so forth, because that's where, first of all, that's where the money was, and that's where sort of guarantees of success were, right? So we have a very similar situation here. So Mordecai Richler was very noticed by American criticism. His movies were made into Hollywood, his novels were transformed into Hollywood movies, and that in the American context is a major thing. If your novel gets transformed into a major Hollywood movie, you've made it. And especially if your heroes are played with mainstream actors like Dustin Hoffman and others, it's sort of a sign of approval. It's a seal, this guy is to be read and so forth. So that's what David would have talked about. But again, he would have stressed that for Richler and for Leonard Cohen, and not only them, we could mention others, Jewish identity and the search for it was very strong in their work. And that would have been the difference between the Canadians and the Americans in the post-World War II era. So I think I'll stop at that point because there's so much more that could be said about this, but we'll continue then. And again, David conveyed his greetings to our gathering, and he will be with us at another time. So thank you for I mean, I tried as best as I could to sort of, this arose from our discussions with David, what he would have talked about. So we'll move on. And I think our second speaker then will be Olha Poliukhovich, who will tell us about her topic that she will be working on and has worked on.
Okay, thank you so much, Romane. So it's a broad and vast topic, and we briefly discussed some of the aspects with Albertina during the coffee break. And I would like to address two points which are essential, I think, and to draw the parallels to the sense of Ukrainianness, which is parallel to sense of Jewishness. And first of all, about theory. We can see a vast theory in Western academia about memory studies. For example, if you are reading Marian Hirsch or Michael Rosberg, that I teach at my courses, and you will look at their book about Chernivtsi, and the conclusion is that Marian Hirsch and Michael Rosberg, they did not find the city of their ancestors they expected to find. They are frustrated by Chernivtsi. For many reasons, so their argument is that they came to independent Ukraine, previously it was Soviet Ukraine, and previously Romanian, Austro-Hungarian, and all this bunch of empires. So what is, they are asking, what is Chernivtsi in fact? They are disappointed. Yes, they closed this topic as far as I know, but still the questions remain, I think, within Ukrainian audience of this book. How we interpret our cultural heritage, and I think it's also among many other things, this is the aftermath of Ukraine's invisibility, I'm not afraid of this word, within the world's cultural context. And I think to a great extent a lack of understanding what Ukraine is. And we can see this after the full-scale invasion when the world unexpectedly opened Ukraine for themselves. So it's topical and very complicated issues. And my main concern is that memory studies field is formed without active participation of Ukrainian researchers. And I think that now we have a situation when we can say more in theoretical frameworks about our cultural identity, about memory issues, and I think we should not be afraid of to discuss all these issues. And by the way, we are having this idea in mind to kindly ask Marian Hirsch to join one of our roundtables within this project, because we want to have open discussion. We don't say that we have a right standpoint and we are right and someone is wrong. But we want to discuss some issues that are crucial for understanding of Ukrainian context and Chernivtsi, including Chernivtsi. And speaking about the topic of invisibility, but on the other hand, there is an influential essay by Marian Hirsch, The Generation of Post-Memory, in which she addresses a very important question. Can the memory of genocide be transformed into action and resistance? And we can see the power of memory in this question, its potential. And this question is very right, especially in Ukrainian context right now. Speaking about Jewish identity, Ukrainian identity, I faced it in my research of the works by Askold Melnichuk. This is an American writer of Ukrainian heritage. And in one of his novels, Ambassador of the Dead, there is a character, the child of the first generation of Ukrainians who migrated to US, and there are different stories of children, and we see how this, undigested, traumatic Ukrainian experience is conveyed to the generation of the children. And it's interesting how the generation of children are reflecting on their own identity. And as Melnichuk shows, this search for understanding. And speaking about Ukraine's invisibility, which is clearly pronounced in this novel, the main character, Nick, is encountering a girl who is of Jewish origin, and there is an interesting debate within them when the main character asks why the world knows so much about the Holocaust and why the world does not know anything about the Holodomor. It's a very powerful moment in the novel. It's essential. But speaking about this novel in terms of the critical reception in the West, one of the most influential critics in the US, Jeffrey Eugenides, wrote a very critical review on this book. And if we read this review, we understand that Jeffrey Eugenides do not clearly understand the history of Ukraine and the sense of this Ukrainianness, which is why I'm saying and underlying the sense of invisibility that exists. And this is also about how we can speak about our stories, how to make them visible, not only within Ukrainians, but how to present them abroad. And speaking about Jewish identity, I was thinking about Ukrainian literature, and I'm more familiar with Ukrainian literature of the 20th century. So, for example, we can see Jewish topics in Lesia Ukrainka's works. In her translation, in her literary production. Lesia Ukrainka is classic Ukrainian writer, and if we are thinking where these topics came from, to her heritage, to her original works, they came mainly through translations and through the study of European literature. For example, George Gordon Byron, one of the favorite writers of Lesia Ukrainka, also wrote about Jewish topics. Or, for example, Henry Heine, this is a favorite Lesia Ukrainka's poet, also had this topic in his literary production. These parallels are very interesting. It's making Lesia Ukrainka's poetry European and universal. Speaking about Ukrainian literature of 1920s, 1930s, I would like to mention the name of Ukrainian playwright Mykola Kulish, who was executed by the Soviets in 1937. And at Kyiv-Mogilянська Academy, the Володимира Моренця Department of Literature, we had a professor, Serhiy Ivanyuk, who researched the topic of the plays by Kulish. And from the standpoint of identity, and it was before full-scale invasion, of course, because unfortunately Serhiy Semyonovich is not with us anymore. And I want to underline that this topic of identity is the focus of our department as well, before it became so fashionable after 2022. And the main conclusion of Serhiy Ivanyuk is that in his works, Mykola Kulish created the vision of Ukrainian community, multi-ethnic Ukrainian community in which Ukrainians, Jews, Germans, Roma people are living peacefully and coexist within one Ukrainian society on the territory of Ukraine. And it's very interesting to think how the story would develop itself. But we can speak only about projections as well. Another writer that comes to my mind is Ivan Bagriany, and his novel Sad Getsemansky, The Garden of Gethsemane, in which he depicts the Soviet prison. He depicts this in his novel long before Alexander Solzhenitsyn did this in 1970s in his famed novel Archipelago Gulag, The Gulag Archipelago. And Yuri Sherek-Shevelyov, emigre Ukrainian well-known critic, is putting attention that in his novel Bagriany is honest and he shows all nationalities of the Soviet Union within this prison. And this is why historically this novel is more relevant than Solzhenitsyn's one. And for me it also sounds very topical and honest, clear in historical and literary perspectives. Okay, I can go on and maybe I will remember something else, but I think these main points I would like to mention. The theory of memory studies and the history of Ukrainian literature as well as Ukrainian issues in the literatures abroad, such as in American literature. Thank you.
Thank you, Olha. And I think we'll have questions later, so we can come back, obviously, to some of the topics that are being raised. We'll continue, maybe to maintain gender equality, and we'll ask Sam to continue.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So it's very easy to catch what I'm going to do inside this project, because we just have to add one word to this central topic. If our central topic is Jewish discourse in Ukrainian literature or in Ukrainian culture, then I would say Jewish discourse in Ukrainian humorous literature. So we have a number of authors in each literature that deal with different images of these or that national characters, and so many of these images, they are stereotypically, they are connected with stereotypes, yes, and they are humorous. So in each literature we can find this humor directed onto other national groups or ethnical groups. And in fact, traditionally, as a rule, each literature produces many funny or even disgusting images of the neighbors. That's normal for all literatures, and we can find different images of humoristic images, for example, from of Ukrainians in our neighbor literatures. And yes, we know even each national group perhaps even has the mocking name, yes, like Moskali or Chochli or something like this, and the part of humoristic discourse. From the very beginning, it is quite aggressive in each literature, and we can find these very stereotypes in our folklore humor, national stereotypes. But then the question is when the literature gets rid of these stereotypes, yes, when the mockery, the satirical images, they transform into more mild, humorous images. Yes. So, because if we take the fourth part of Aeneid by Ivan Kotlяревский, the fourth part begins with this further voyage of Aeneid to Latynia, and on their way they find an island of Circea, Circum, yes, the powerful witch that transforms every man that comes to her shore into an animal, different animals. But for Kotlяревский, it is very important to make these parallels. Which nation would become which animal? Yes, and he has something like 16 different nationalities there, and they are transforming by her into into these or that animals. Yes, it is quite a strong mockery. It is not polite. It is not pleasant. But since that time, then till the other authors, we can find the differences, And slightly, these stereotypes, they are less and less aggressive. Of course, we can find in different literatures, we can find the reproduction of these mocking stereotypes till this time. And for example, you remember this Jonathan Safran Foer's Everything is Illuminated, and Ukrainians are mocked in this book, and Jews also are mocked in this book. So it is quite specific, and he's quite, once again, aggressive. So we can find stereotypes, but we can find how literature tries to get rid of stereotypes, or those who are producing humorous literature, they transform from satire, from mockery to less, to more mild, more kind forms of humor. So it is very interesting to find this Jewish discourse in this, since folklore, because we have many folklore pieces with the same, in the same direction, and then to our greatest or most known humorous writers, and there are a number of them, like for example Stepan Rudansky, and of course there are images of Jews in Rudansky's poems, but it is impossible to separate from other national groups there, because he also writes about Poles, he also writes about Turks, about Tatars, and about many different groups. And so what is the kind of his writings? Is it still mockery, or maybe it is not, he is not so aggressive, or perhaps he is aggressive with some of national groups and kind with other national groups? So it's a question. We also have this then comedy writers in the second part of the 19th century, like Karpenko-Karий and Kropivnitsky and Staritsky, and also have different national group images in their comedies. So it is interesting to find out the type of humor they use, because if we talk about humor, and especially about this kind of humor that is directed onto certain groups, national groups or social groups, yes, humor about males, humor about females, yes, humor about brunettes or blondes, yes. So if we take this direction, then the question is very, very sensitive and even perhaps political if we think about the national or ethnical groups. Yes, if we remember, for example, Soviet anecdotes, yes, then these Soviet anecdotes, they were talked about certain ethnic groups or certain national groups. There were anecdotes, for example, about Estonian people, but no anecdotes, for example, about, or less anecdotes about, for example, Azerbaijan people. So it is interesting to understand the whole machinery of this, but of course it's a bigger problem, and inside this research, I'm going just to take the major Ukrainian mock makers or humor makers, and then find out how they see or how they observe, yes, the images of Jewish people in their writings. And it is interesting to find how is it something it goes another way. For example, if we take those who were writing humorous literature in emigration, for example, like Микола Понеділок or Zoya Kogut, the first woman that wrote humoristic pieces in Ukrainian literature, it is Zoya Kogut from Australia. Now we have many women that write stand-ups, but then it was not so. Is that attitude towards this or that national group, the mockery or humorous pieces about this or that national group, does it depend on the situation, on the historical situation? It is not equal in authoritarian state or totalitarian state and in free world. And so it is interesting to find it out. And but this is quite a vast topic. This Jewish discourse in Ukrainian humoristic literature. But and I'm going to research just this. But there is another topic that is closely connected, also very interesting. And it is maybe for future or something like this, because we can also talk about Jewish humoristic literature in Ukraine. We understand that something that is called Odessa humor, it is mainly Jewish humor. And all people we know from Odessa that wrote humoristic things, humoristic pieces, they have Jewish origin. Yes, from Ilf, Petrov, and Olesha, and whatever. There were more of them until Zhvanetsky and so on. So that's another very interesting point. Where we that also relates to Jewish discourse in Ukrainian literature as a whole. So that is the direction, and I guess that there can be many interesting observations and many interesting conclusions. There is also one more topic. How is it true, and we can also think about Ukrainian literature and Jewish voices in Ukrainian literature. Is it true that what Sigmund Freud told, that true humor is the outcome of trauma destruction? It is possible only after the trauma destruction. If someone has trauma and then survives trauma, just that time, true humor is possible, as Sigmund Freud saw it. So this version is also interesting to understand or to try to research.
Thank you, Rostislav. And now we'll ask Irina Borysyuk, our faculty member, to continue, please.
Thank you. I'm interested mostly in the vision of shared past of Ukrainian and Jewish, as it reflected in contemporary Ukrainian novels related to the Second World War. And I've chosen 3 novels for the examining of this vision. It's the Tango of Death by Yuri Vaynerchuk, Amadoka by Sofia Andruchovich, and the Museum of Abandoned Secrets by Oksana Zabushko. And I'm interested not only in images of Jews in our Ukrainian texts and in the way of reflection of these images, but I'm interested in maybe the model, the vision of this shared past. And I'd say it's more about us than about Jews, but maybe it's an interesting way of reflecting of mutual traumas. And it's what is interesting for me that in the Tango of Death, Yuri Vinnichuk depicts the vision of idyllic past, where all nation lives in peace and harmony. And the very plot of the novel were four friends, the German, the Pole, the Jew and the Ukrainian, help each other, support each other, and they are connected by friendship and even love. Interestingly, this plot is not focused mainly on this four friends, because the main line is about the Ukrainian and the Jew. And this story of love and support, and this vision is very warm and comfortable, but maybe Vinnichuk excludes traumas and problems, because as for me, he uses the topos of paradise for describing this city, interwar Lviv, as a maybe lost space. Yeah. Lviv existed, but it doesn't exist no more. And I'd say the topos of the fall is also included in the narrative, because all confrontation, traumas and enmity is connected with some outer intrusions, because Lviv is a place of harmony, but the German comes and the Red Army comes, and the war between nationalities starts. And this vision is more about maybe projections, or maybe not only the image of imaginary past, but maybe the vision of imaginary future. And Zabushko and Andruchovich depict another vision of this shared past. In the Museum of Abandoned Secrets, Oksana Zabushko focuses on, I think that the main problem is the tension between upbringing and belonging. And one of the characters, he is not the main character, but nevertheless, Petro Ivanovich Bukhalov. He is a son of the member of Ukrainian Insurgent Army, UPA, and the doctor, Rahil, who is of Jewish origin. Pavlo Ivanovich Bukhalov knows nothing about his past because his mother was imprisoned when he was pregnant, he was raped, and he committed suicide. And he was raised by a KGB officer, and he was raised as a Soviet member, as a representative of Soviet mentality. But as for me, Zabushko described this problem of between upbringing and belonging in counterintuitive way, because Bukhalov's daughter Veronika, who knows nothing about his origin, in fact learns about her past from different sources, from institutions, from literature, and so on. He is not raised as a Jew, but she learns to be Jew in some way, and it's really interesting. And in Amadoka, I suspect that we have a hidden dialogue between the Museum of Abandoned Secrets and Amadoka, because Andruchovich is also focused on this problem of upbringing and belonging, but she described it in other way. And Amadoka is charactered picture of contemporary and interwar Ukraine, and the relationship between nationalities, between Ukrainian and Jews, oscillates in some way as fascinating and confrontation. For example, love kills in very straightforward way, because Uliana, one of the characters, who is in love with Pinchas of Jewish origin, she kills her lover, and this truth is unbearable for her, because her body is in scars from suicide attempts. And interestingly enough, this truth about origin is inscribed not only in cultural institution, not only in family tradition, but also in body, because when cousins who know nothing about their relation meet, they feel a very strong sexual impulse, and their bodies say something about their origin. And as for me, it's really interesting way of describing this metaphor. And Hannah Olura, who wrote about Amadoka, reflected very interesting thing. Софія Андрухович wrote about Baal Shem Tov, Григорій Сковорода, and the Pinzel, the sculpture, and all these figures who live in one time, they didn't interact. They didn't involved in cultural dialogue. And maybe it's a key for reading Amadoka, because the lack of sincere intercultural dialogue resulted in this terrifying things. And Andruchovich is honest about it, because Abel, who is the father of Pinchas, says that friendship, childish friendship of Uliana and Pinchas shouldn't be continued. And he says it very mildly, but this idea of cultural and national separation is the main obstacle for building the shared space, because Andruchovich says about the absence of this shared space. All Ukrainians and Jews live in separated bubbles and didn't interact. And I think it's very interesting, however, rather pessimistic view of our shared past.
Thank you, Irina. And now I understand we'll go online and we'll hear from Margarita Yehorchenko on her topic.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can. And then we can see you too.
That's good. I'm glad to see you all. And I was going to talk today not so much about my topic, but to speak more about the memory, as it is the main topic of our meeting today. And I would like to probably address my words and to take as a basis all of your speeches, not to summarize, but probably to think more about the issues which you mentioned in your speeches. So I'm going to talk about memory and forgetting, or invisibility, as Olga mentioned, not only of Ukraine, but also about invisibility of Jewish heritage in Ukraine as well. So Roman Veretельник started his speech with the American Jewish literature, and he was talking also about the authors whose parents or who themselves were from Ukraine. or from Eastern Europe. When we meet people from the Northern America, from the US, we usually might hear, oh, my grandmother was from somewhere from Eastern Europe, or my grandfather fled from Ukraine, from somewhere from Ukraine, which I think makes our country not only invisible, but also such a no-name land somewhere in Eastern Europe, where before the Holocaust Jews lived. And now they are not. At least it sounds like that, because of course we know that we have a big Jewish community in Ukraine now, but it sounds like that it was a great culture, it was a territory where many Jews lived, then it was Holocaust, some of them managed to reach the US, and now it's nothing there. So that's one side, and on the other side we have the lack of the memory of Jewish heritage in Ukraine. I'm saying it because I work with Jewish heritage for many years now, and we could see it even in the popular culture in Ukraine, when, for example, every year pilgrims from all over the world come to Uman to celebrate the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, and we have this, well, I would call it anti-Semitic commentators who say that they don't have to come here. I think we have a lack of education in this sphere because, in my view, I think we have to give to our society more information about the Jewish past, the Jewish history, which roots into Ukrainian history so deep that it could not be compared to any other national minority. We all know, for example, that the Hasidut, the major Jewish religious teaching, was founded here on the territory of Ukraine by Baal Shem Tov, already mentioned today by one of our speakers. Of course, in 20th century, the situation became better as Jewish and Ukrainian writers and cultural activists were interacting more. For example, we all know that the memory of Babi Yar, the tragedy of Babi Yar in Kiev, which Soviet regime was trying to hide, was actively discussed by Ivan Zuba, who was speaking about the problem of forgetting of the tragedy of Jewish people here in Kiev, and this was the first big action of Holocaust in the Eastern Europe. So I see it as a problem of two sides. On the one side, we have Ukraine as a forgotten and invisible land where Jews once lived, and we have to open our country as a country of multicultural heritage, And on the other hand, we have this problem of Jewish heritage in Ukraine itself, which has to be more visible for us in Ukraine and also outside Ukraine. So I'll probably stop here, and I'm ready to join the further discussion.
Thank you, Margareta. And if you allow, I'll just say a few words on some of the things that I've been addressing in researching the area. First of all, we've heard a good number of times today, and very rightly so, about memory studies, of course, as something that is relatively new in the theoretical framework of addressing the issues that we're talking about. And David, who I talked about previously, he has a book called In Praise of Forgetting. And it was published in 2016, and in its time it caused quite a stir, especially when Holocaust studies were being discussed, because as the title suggests, in praise of forgetting. What do we remember? What do we forget? What do we forgive? Those were sort of the issues that David addresses in that book. And one of his conclusions is that some kind of ultimate, perhaps, state that we can aspire to, maybe we can never reach it, is to forget the traumas of the past. He's not suggesting we forget the Holocaust, not at all, or Babin Yar. Geez, I'm sorry for this. It's this telephone that keeps falling. When David came he's been coming to Kyiv since basically the spring of 2022. He's a former war journalist who, when he saw what was happening here in Ukraine, he decided for himself, I cannot not be there. And he sometimes mentions that he thinks of his mother, again, Susan Sontag, who spent a good number of months, indeed years, in Sarajevo when that terrible war and massacre was occurring there. And once he's been here in Kyiv, one of his topics was, I remember one day in a discussion, he found out about Bykivnya. And he asked me what I knew about Bykivnya and asked if we could go there. And when we went there, David was stunned. First of all, because of the story, tens of thousands of people who were executed, shot in Kyiv and taken to Bykivnya. And his thoughts were, how come no one knows about this? Why isn't it more discussed in Ukrainian society? And of course, I mean, outside of Ukraine, it's totally unknown, the Bykivnya tragedy. And what happened in 1937-38 that preceded the Holocaust, basically. And since that time, we partly here at the Chair of Literature Studies, we've gotten together and done work, actually text and a performance, which is both in Ukrainian and in English, addressing the issue. And David's worked on translations in tandem with myself on Mike Johansson, Semenko, and other poets who were shot in Kyiv and taken to Bykivnya. And we've heard about Babi Yar today. And that's one of the points he keeps stressing. Bykivnya and Babi Yar should be talked about together. When dignitaries come to Kyiv, why are they not taken to Bykivnya? Indeed, why are there no road signs on the road to Bykivnya? If you're driving there, you have no idea that there's this major memorial there, and the way the memorial is done, it's done with incredible tact. And it's a true place of memory that just makes one reflect on that great tragedy. But I just wanted to mention that. And what I've been working on recently is some theatrical presentations and some dramaturgy that addresses the issue. But before, I'd like to say a few words about that. The generational question that I was mentioning about America, well, that David was basically addressing about writers of the post-World War II era and writers like Foyer who then become different in tone. I think we can see the same thing in Ukrainian Jewish writing, because one of the authors that I'd like to mention is Leonid Kiselyov, a poet who died when he was 22 years old. If one looks for Jewishness in his writing, it's hard to find. But that would be a sign of the times. In the 1960s, not to mention anything about the decades before, Jewishness was, of course, not accentuated in one's writing. It was not the thing to do. That can be said about Leonid Kiselyov's father, Volodymyr Leontovich. He was a major writer in the Soviet Union, writing in Russian. His books were transformed into Soviet films, and there is also no perceived Jewishness in those texts. However, if we really fast forward again to today, and I'd just like to mention two poets of a much younger generation. One is Kiva from Donetsk, who she twice has lost her home because of the invasion, first of all, in 2014 and then in 2022. So she's a double refugee. And Kiva very much explores her dual heritage in her work, both her Jewish heritage and her Ukrainian heritage. And she, both her poetry contains discussions of that, and also when she gives interviews, when she gives talks, she is very forthcoming about talking about the contradictions, the dilemmas, and just the issues involved with having a dual identity. The other poet of her generation, also from the east, from the Luhansk Oblast, is Alexander Averbach, who is currently in Canada. His biography is also, he also lost his home because of the war, and subsequently he has lived for many years, first of all in Israel. He was actually in the Israeli army. He's lived in Canada for many years. Actually, he's lived the larger part of his life outside of Ukraine. He does make trips back, and if we look at his poetry, it is also very much his Jewish, the questions that he sort of investigates in his poetry are very much related, again, to his Ukrainian identity and to his Jewish identity. And if you know the one of the poetry collections that he is best known for, Żydівський король, which it's difficult to translate into Ukrainian because it's the Jewish king. But the problem here is that Żydівський, Єврейський in Ukrainian. Żydівський is a word that is no longer used to identify Jews in Ukrainian because it's considered a slur, right? It would be like calling Afro-Americans by the names that they were called previously. And one of the commentators about Averbuk has written, Oksana Lutsishina, a writer, Ukrainian writer who has emigrated to the United States, that this is indicative of what, for instance, has happened in the Afro-American community, where words are taken back. Sort of words that were used against the community are taken back and reused in a different way. She also makes the point that that was done by women with words that were used against them and with other communities. For instance, the word queer that was first used as a major slur for decades and then has been reclaimed, and now there are queer studies at universities, etc. So Lutsishina considers Averbuk's naming of that book sort of very much in line with that type of reclamation. And the very first lines of that poetry collection are very emotional, very stark, and they go something like this. I've forgiven my Ukrainian great-grandfather for going on a pogrom against my Jewish great-grandfather. But then he continues, I forgive my Jewish grandmother for writing a denunciation of my Ukrainian great-grandmother, which got her killed. So he goes both ways, and he's very much, I think, one of those writers who is investigating the whole area of forgiveness. How do we think of forgiveness? How do we talk about forgiveness? That's what that book is about, that poetry collection, to a large degree. And Iyakiva too, and not only them, she is also in that kind of territory in her books, trying to bring together her two identities, as is Alexander Averbuch, which brings me to some of the work that I've been doing recently on Leonid Kisilov. And this is a major poet who died at 22. And it's a theatrical story, a theater story, because some of his texts were transformed into a play in the 1980s. Now, very little is known about this today in Ukraine, this story. The collection was called Malenka Futbolna Komanda, the little football team. And that was sort of a book written actually not by him, but it was written about him. And the author of that book was Mr. Sherbak. What was Mr. Sherbak's first name? Yuri Sherbak. I'm sorry, again, memory is affecting me. But Yuri Sherbak was a Ukrainian doctor, writer, diplomat. He's a former ambassador to the Ukraine's ambassador to the United States. And the book was about basically Leonid's story, a young poet succumbing to a terrible disease and dying at a very early age. And also the story, and this is where the major story about Leonid Kisilov is, if we're thinking about identity, is it's less of a Jewish story, because again, he didn't investigate in his work his Jewish identity, but he investigated a Ukrainian identity. Even though his familial ties, unlike Averbuch and Iyakiva, don't have sort of Ukrainian traces, but he switched from Russian to Ukrainian at a certain point, very late in his writing, actually very close to his death. And that was a major surprise. One person who was very close to him, and this is documented in the hospital where Leonid Kisilov was already basically dying, asked when she was visiting him one day, saw a whole stack of books in Ukrainian, from Ukrainian literature. And she asked, what are these books doing here? Almost in this satirical way that Rostislav was talking about, in this joking manner. I mean, what do you have to do with these Ukrainian books? And Leonid answered by saying, one of the most frightening thoughts that I've had recently is that I'll die not knowing this writing. And that's how serious he was about investigating. And he would go on to say, you know, I knew nothing of this. And which shows, again, these two solitudes that we're talked about today. The people living in a city like Kyiv. And Kyiv, for Leonid Kisilov, is also a very present factor. And so you had these solitudes living in Kyiv and never meeting. And Leonid wanted to investigate that. Although as a very young man, actually, he was still a high school student at 16. He was first published in the Russian Literary Gazette when he was 16, which was a major accomplishment for a young high school kid at the time. And he got into a lot of trouble because in that poem, a satirical poem, I can't remember the exact lines, but he says, you know, like, if all the Tsars were bad, why is there in Leningrad a statue to Peter the Great? And then he ends the poem by saying, Shevchenko was probably right about Peter, right? He got into a lot of trouble. There were articles written about that. Of course, he was never published there again, and so forth. So, I mean, the Ukrainian part of him was always present, but never fully explored until close to his death. And then Sherbak, in his play that he wrote, he wanted to show this. And the play was performed was produced in 1984 at the Molodizhny Theater, today the Molodey Theater, on Prorizna Avenue, or street, sorry. And it was in Ukrainian. and the poetry was both in Russian and Ukrainian. And curiously, the program didn't list that these were Kiselyov's poems. And I'd just like to read you a quote from someone whose life was very much affected by Kiselyov, and that is Hanna Sherman. Hanna Sherman today is the editor of Український театр, which is a glossy magazine devoted to the Ukrainian theater. And this is what she writes. In my youth, with all tectonic processes of a cultural historical all my processes of cultural historical self-identity began with The Little Football Team by Yuri Shcherbak. I saw the play 15 times. And that's where she says that she started to come in touch with her own identity, which was Jewish, Ukrainian, Russian. It was a mixture. So we can see how Kiselyov's work must have, poetry must have affected one person, Hanna Sherman, and how influential that must have been. I think that Leonid Kiselyov will be better known in Ukraine in the future when more and more is talked about him. I think younger generations probably don't know too much about him, but that I'm sure will change. The other author I'd like to mention, I'll stop because we're running out of time, is Roald Hoffmann. I don't know if anyone has heard of Roald Hoffmann. Roald Hoffmann, first of all, I'll just say that he is the Nobel Prize winner in chemistry in 1981. He was born in Zolochiv in western Ukraine, and when World War II broke out and the Holocaust also took place in western Ukraine, his father perished in a camp. But his mother and himself survived by being hidden in the town of Univ in western Ukraine. And in Univ, we find one of Ukraine's lavras. And a school teacher in Univ hid them above his school in the attic, where they spent 2 full years, until they could find a way to get out to Germany. They lived in Germany for a while and then made their way to the United States in the late 40s, where Hoffmann continued, of course, his education, his studies at university, and became a world-renowned chemist. He's also a poet and writer. And later on in life, he writes a play. I just want to make sure I name it correctly. Something That Belongs to You. And the play is all about his story in Uman when he was a little boy. And the play is about Frida, a woman who is at that point 82 years old. She's now living in Philadelphia in the United States. And her family is perturbed because a visitor from Ukraine is coming to take care of her, because she's at an age where she needs help. And so they decide to get someone from Ukraine, a woman from Ukraine, who will help her out. And Frida reacts again in this dual way. In some monologues in the play, she talks about Ukrainians in the harshest ways, all they did to us, type of thing. In other episodes, she becomes very sentimental and talks about how the Ukrainians saved us. And it goes back and forth, and Frida's family divides. Some in her family, her son's daughter and son, they basically take the pro-Ukrainian side, trying to say, well, but we're all alive because of the Ukrainians who took care of you. But the play is a very interesting investigation of how memory works. And in the play, it's sort of almost like an O'Neill play. We see where Hoffmann, when he was a young boy, there's sort of two areas on stage. They're there when he's a little boy with his mother, and they're here when they're now sort of in Philadelphia with the family. And we see the action taking place together, and all these discussions going on, again, about identity, and all the very painful questions of identity, and the Holocaust. I'll just end by saying this, that when the revolution of dignity took place, Roald Hoffmann supported Ukraine very publicly. He continues to support Ukraine very publicly. And he's made visits to Uman, not Uman, sorry, to Univ and Zolochiv, and there's actually a little museum there now that he's helped create. But it's a story of how, in a totally different. The play, by the way, has been produced in Germany. It's been produced in the United States, and so far it hasn't been translated into Ukrainian, but it will be. So a story like that will also get out. And there are many other sort of fascinating stories that we really know little about. For instance, the actor who became a major actor in the United States, Alexander Granach. He was the actor who played in the cult movie Nosferatu from the Dracula movie, still the silent movie, and then later in many German movies. He's from Kolomea, and from a village near Kolomea, and he wrote a good number of books too, and in his books he talks about Jewish life in a Ukrainian village. And then he talks, there's an incredible memoir of his about Jewish and Ukrainian life in Lviv. He was not shy about writing books like this. He was also, from his writing, like much later Auerbach or Iakiva would be, he was very much interested in sort of some kind of internal rapprochement with the Jewish and Ukrainian solitudes, and that's what he wrote about. So I think I'll stop here because we still have time for questions. Mm-hmm. So if there are questions, please ask.
I would like just to add something.
Please do.
I don't know if you hear me well. No, I don't know if
Please.
do I mean?
I think that would be...
Yes. No, thank you very much. It was very interesting and motivating to read more, and knowing I'm getting to know new authors, so this is very interesting. I'm very happy to be here for many reasons that I have already shared with you, but one in particular is that I'm from South America. I'm not from North America, and I'm a descendant of a Ukrainian Jewish family that ran away from Ukraine at the beginning of the 20th century, not to United States of America, but to South America. And what I want to say is, when you were talking about how these people are having some nostalgia of what they think it was the terroir of their ancestors. This is a fiction that we, all descendants of Jewish diaspora, have in our minds. It's something that is common, I think, to all of us. And that's a fiction, basically, that we build up in our minds. So when we finally go to the place, this mythical place where our ancestors live and were persecuted and left, etc., we all have different expectations. And these expectations are very much linked to our romanticism, it's a fiction. And as individuals that we create our own fictions, we create our fictions based on our own reality. So what I'm trying to say in a very subtle way, I don't know how to say it, I don't think that is irrelevant who this person is and from where this person is thinking, what she or he is going to find at the other end of the rainbow. In other ways, a person from Argentina might not think the same as a person from North America, or it might be different things because we went through different histories in our different countries. So the way we create our own memories of fictional heaven where our family lived are different. So my point is, I understand why this North American thing is so strong, but you also have South American Ukrainian descendants. So I think that the Argentinian the studies on Argentinian and Ukrainian literature should be done somehow to find how we are related. And the last thing I wanted to say, and it's just food for thought, I'm saying that the individuals who build up these memories or these expectations regarding what Ukraine is going to be they also have some other background on their shoulders that might be interesting. It's not the same a person that is a descendant of a Spanish colony that maybe a person that is coming from a these English colonies. The last thing I wanted to say regarding memory and the names of the cities, the name of the places, is that Jews, like my family, who left Ukraine at the beginning of the 20th century, much, much earlier than the Second World War, before the Russian Revolution, before 1914, what's the date of the revolution is? 17, sorry. They left in 1914. So when they left, why the names are not remembered? Because they left because of their identity. They left the place where they were living because of their identity, because they were Jews. And when they left behind their whole lives. They left behind their friends, their families, their villages, everything. So when they arrived to Argentina, they didn't want to remember, because they had to remember they were Jews. They were protecting their identity as Jews, and they were trying to survive so that's the problem also of memory of the victims of persecution, that the names are not remembered because they are part of this trauma that cannot be. In my family was totally different, but I know that it's true that the names are forgotten because the trauma was so strong that no one wanted to talk. My great-grandparents didn't want to talk about it. And many people who left Ukraine or left Poland or left different countries persecuted because they were of their identity as Jews, didn't want to remember. That's it.
Thank you.
Maybe some more questions? If not, I would like to reflect a little bit. So, it's our idea of this project to reflect on some very important sites of memory for us, such as Bukovina, Babyn Yar, in broad perspective and putting them together. And I would like to add here the topoi of the Soviet prison. And there is a story that is barely pronounced even in Ukraine, when our major poet of the second half of the 20th century, Vasyl Stus, was imprisoned, and for some time he was in one cell with Semen Gluzman, of the Jewish origin, who was the Ukrainian Soviet doctor, Ukrainian doctor, who protested against the Soviet compulsory psychiatric treatment, against the misuse of psychiatry in the Soviet Union. And this is a wonderful story that, in fact, it's an inspiring story that the Soviets thought that they will argue with each other, that they won't get along, but this story turned into the history of friendship between Vasyl Stus and Semen Gluzman. And that's what we can read in the memoirs, and I think we can go deeper, making archival search. And that's what we are going to do in this project, and we are very much inspired. And I also want to say that our project is also aimed at ruining some propaganda issues, for example, like Rostislav was mentioning, humor, but we also know humor from different sides, including from the side as everyday humor during the Soviet times that was not in favor of Jews, so they were the objects for mockery, and it was something even unconscious, because in the independent Ukraine I clearly remember all those anecdotes. And so it's something that was done on purpose, and I think we should also deconstruct these narratives, why these anecdotes and so-called jokes came into the everyday discourse of the people in the Soviet Union, including Ukraine, Soviet Ukraine at that time. Also I would like to mention that there is also the translations as well as original works published by our wonderful publishing house, Duhi Litera. And there was recently translated a book by Sylvie Courtier-Denamy, Three Women in Dark Times, Edith Stein, Hannah Arendt, and Simona Weil. And for us, it's also important to stay in the cultural dialogue through translations. And what is interesting, these three classical philosophers, these three women of Jewish origin, how they are dealing with the questions of identity, belonging, evil, because for us it's the question of life and death. Seriously, it's about justice, so it's not only about identity or about how we call that or this city. It's about how we approach to it, and memory studies, what I was critical of, that it should not be studied something in abstract, like we have some memory studies and we have somewhere distant Chernivtsi or Chernovitz or something like else, but these questions are really deeply interconnected. And now when we have the brutal genocidal war against Ukraine, we should accurately approach these questions and articulate them in a very clear manner, taking into account historical and cultural background. Okay, I will stop here, I think.
Thank you. Perhaps, yes, please.
Hello, dear audience. Thank you, Olga Pavlina, for mentioning about the dissident heritage, because this is my field of interest, and I'm researching now this question about relation Ukrainian and Jewish dissident, especially in the camp. It is really a very unique and brightly story about the support, solidarity, and understanding. Just before yesterday, I realized online round table where Ukrainian and Jewish dissidents were present, and it was really very warm and special atmosphere during this event, because people didn't see each other for decades. And fortunately, from the both sides in the memory, this representative of the group wrote the reflection about this friendship and support and solidarity. And for me, besides the research interest and scholar interest, this is very important story about our relation, because of course, as two nations, for the thousandth year of our story, because really from the time of Rus we have this relation, and this story full of dramatic and very tragic situation. But together with this, we have many successful and really warm cases of relation. And fortunately, our enemies develop very strong propaganda and really strongly support this myth about the Ukrainian anti-Semitism. And it, for me, especially throughout this story, I want to demonstrate and destroy in some way also these strong myths about Ukrainian anti-Semitism. And also it is very important, I think, for everybody who work in the problem and highlights the achievements of our relation of Jewish and Ukrainian culture. It's very important to talk as much as possible about really successful story, because it is it's our weapon now to tell this, because it's a part of our past, it's a part of our relation, and it can change picture of of people all around the world who looks on our situation and know something about Ukrainian. So I think that it is like extra task to highlight this successful thing, because it's not like we didn't imagine something. We just need to tell in a right way, to choose the right words for communication. Maybe with different part of our world we need also to talk in some special way, but it is our work, it's our homework, and we have to do this. Thank you. Just a comment.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Yulia. We know that ever since the war started, and much before that, the Russian narratives about Ukrainians were used or attempted to be used to sort of convince Europeans, North Americans, South Americans about Ukraine's sort of innate anti-Semitism, right, to this day. And they keep using that terminology, right, the Nazis. And speaking of humor, one of the big stories for me in 1922 was American, I'm getting back to the Americans here, to the North Americans, sorry, was North American comedy television, meaning the late shows. They're very influential because millions and millions of people, tens of millions of people watch these shows, and all of them came out very strongly, basically saying, how can you talk about Ukraine as being Nazi when the president of Ukraine is Jewish? They kept making that point over and over, and it worked. Because of that, many Americans who wouldn't have known what to think, they started thinking these guys are right, by saying that. So that was a big story. And comedy here was the comedians, the stand-up comedians, they did a lot of work as far as this. I'm sure there was a sort of in part of that because they were proud of the fact that Mr. Zelensky was a former comedian, and they felt a certain kinship with him as sort of, part of the same brotherhood type of thing, but that's sort of one way where a narrative was basically stopped before it could do damage, despite the fact that the Russians are continuing with that narrative that no one believes in anymore. I just wanted...
Russian propaganda tries to do something with that. They said, well, Zelensky is a Jew, but he is Nazi as well.
Yeah, that's quite a... That's quite a story, considering that a part of his family are Holocaust victims too. That argumentation just doesn't work these days in today's world. So there's a lot of work to be done in all kinds of sort of explorations of narratives, how they work, including counter-narratives, and just getting stories out. That's the major thing. So please, anyone else, if you'd like to comment or ask anything, please do. We still have time. 4 minutes. 4 minutes.
Maybe we have questions online. Can you check, please, for us?
It might also seem strange to someone from outside of Ukraine. Semen Hluzman was mentioned here. Someone who spent 5 years in the terrible camps, 7 years in exile, for being a good doctor and saying that Petro Grigorenko, the Ukrainian general, was not crazy, he was not insane. And for that, he was basically incarcerated. But what I wanted to say about Semen Hluzman, he, in the camps, and this is what Yulia was talking about, he developed great friendships with the former UPA, Ukrainian Insurgent Army,